Hey everybody, welcome to Matt Connarton Unleashed, the television edition. It is January, what is it, the 27th already? 2016. This is great. We're almost to the end of January and still only one minor snow event this year here in New Hampshire. So I'm very happy about that. Let's see. So welcome to the show. And of course, if you are watching live, I would invite you to participate. You can call the number on your screen, or we do have the active chat room at ipmnation.com/live1, which you can use to opine. You can also tweet me at Matt Connarton. And of course, we do have the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page. Please like the page if you haven't done so already. And of course, don't forget the radio edition of Unleashed, which is 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1. And let's see, and Tuesdays and Thursday nights, we're also carried on OTR FM. So very happy about that as well. And the set looks a little different. We got the nuclear explosions behind me this time, which I think that looks really good. So thank you, John. Unless it was like that last week and I didn't notice, but I like that better than the other graphic with the looks like the sci-fi looking thing. This is much better. Because, you know, sometimes the show, when I'm unleashing, it's like unleashing atomic energy or something. Although, of course, if there's some people might not like the imagery because it scares them, you know, which I can understand. I grew up growing up in the 80s during the Cold War, had quite the unhealthy preoccupation with the threat of nuclear war, which is still a threat. It's always a threat, but boy, I'm starting the show off on a dark note there, aren't I? Well, okay, let's get into it. There's plenty to talk about today. For one thing, I was actually between shows, I was very excitedly a moment ago telling John Hopwood about, because we were talking on the show last week about the lack of polling data out of South Carolina and how frustrating that is. And there has been some recent polling data out of South Carolina. Now, the reason this is so important is because I personally believe that the Democratic nomination will be decided in South Carolina. And this is why I think that, because as it stands now, Hillary will most likely lose the New Hampshire primary. And she may lose Iowa as well. Iowa could go either way. And Iowa's strange with their caucus system that nobody understands. I don't understand it. You know, I've never heard anyone explain it in a way that makes it understandable to me. Maybe I'm just slow with that. I don't know. But Iowa's weird. In 2012, I think at one point they had established that Rick Santorum had actually won the Iowa caucus, someone no one would have expected to win anything. And then and they were saying, no, he won by 8 votes, which is like, and I remember talking about it on this show, actually, back when we used to do the show at QC News. I said, see, if you ever think that your vote doesn't count, Santorum won by only 8 votes in the Iowa caucus. And then we found out a few weeks later, well, actually, maybe he didn't really win. It might have been Ron Paul who actually won. And I think at one point they thought somebody else had won. It was crazy. Iowa's strange that way. So you never know how Iowa's going to go. So could be Bernie. It could be Hillary. Probably Hillary, but I know that Bernie's been surging there, picking up ground. And he's really, I honestly believe he's going to win the New Hampshire primary, which is soon, next month. So the thing is, in order for Hillary to win the nomination, she can afford to lose Iowa and New Hampshire. Her firewall is South Carolina. If she loses Iowa, the campaign can write it off as no big deal because Iowa, like I said, is strange and not a good predictor. The Iowa caucus is not a good predictor, I don't think, statistically of nominees or presidents, future presidents anyway. I don't think. So she can afford to lose Iowa. They can write that off. That's why so much of the focus is on the New Hampshire primary. You know, Iowa will be the first votes cast in this process, but New Hampshire is the first primary. And she can afford to lose New Hampshire as well. I mean, don't get me wrong. It hurts. It hurts the campaign if she does, but they'll spin it as easily as, well, of course Bernie Sanders won. He's from Vermont. Vermont's right next door. He has favorite son status in New Hampshire. That's why he won. They'll do the same thing that Bill Clinton did in 1992. A lot of people forget this. Bill Clinton lost the New Hampshire primary in 1992. It was won by Senator Paul Tsongas, who later passed away. And at the time, see, part of the reason people forget that is there's one of those iconic moments in politics that everyone has seen, that video of Bill Clinton that night when he spoke to the media and he said something, I think is almost his exact words were, New Hampshire, tonight, you have made Bill Clinton the comeback kid. Labeled himself the comeback kid, you know, because he'd taken some dings to his campaign in terms of, was Jennifer Flowers before? I forget. There were so many, Jennifer Flowers and Paula Jones and all these different women with their accusations against Clinton, which were damaging leading up to the New Hampshire primary, but then he came back and almost won it. But because of that iconic sort of moment that everyone remembers, people forget that he actually lost the New Hampshire primary. But like I said, they treated it like a victory. Paul Tsongas, he's from Massachusetts, a border state. A lot of people over the years from Massachusetts have moved up to New Hampshire. So, of course, you know, he was popular in New Hampshire. So, of course, he won. So it's still a victory to come in second in New Hampshire in that circumstance. And like I said, because of that moment of him speaking, a lot of people forget that he lost. And then, of course, he went on to win big in other primaries and went on to be the nominee and went on to be the president. So we may see history repeat itself with Hillary. Hillary will lose, I believe, the New Hampshire primary. They'll spin it as, well, Bernie's a favorite son. He's from a border state. And whatever, onward and upward. And then it's on to South Carolina. So she can afford to lose Iowa and New Hampshire. As long as she wins South Carolina, she's good. And at that point, she will probably be, I think we can safely project, barring some other major scandal, and it would have to be major to affect the Clintons because they're like Teflon, barring some other major scandal or an indictment because the FBI is investigating her, she'll go on from South Carolina. If she wins there, that sets her up great for Super Tuesday when you've got a whole bunch of primaries on the same day, many of them in the South. She'll probably sweep the Southern primaries because, as we talk about on the show all the time, in the South, and in South Carolina specifically, they're probably not going to vote for the Jewish guy from Vermont with the Brooklyn accent. They're going to vote for Hillary. But now, and that's why, too, I am sticking with my prediction. Hillary Clinton will be the Democratic nominee, Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee, and then Hillary Clinton will be the next president. I still believe that, but here's the thing. What if coming out of New Hampshire, that gives Bernie such a surge, because there's still so many people who don't believe that he can even win New Hampshire, who still think he's just going to flame out and will have been sort of a novelty candidate. But what if, so he wins New Hampshire, proves those people wrong, and that gives him so much momentum on top of the momentum that he already has, because he already has a lot of momentum. He's been surging in national polls, and he's been surging in South Carolina, because there was a poll. And again, you know, like John and I were talking about last week, it's been hard to find polling data out of South Carolina, but finally some has emerged. And it appears that, yes, Hillary has a strong lead, almost a 2-to-1 margin over Bernie Sanders, but he is surging and he is slowly closing that gap. And he has momentum everywhere. He's surged in Iowa. He's got a lot of momentum in general. So what if his existing momentum, particularly in places like South Carolina, combined with the additional momentum that he'll get after winning the New Hampshire primary, what if that puts him over the top and he actually wins in South Carolina? It can happen. Because again, we talk about history repeating itself. And what happened in 2008 when, Hillary was trying to be the nominee and Barack Obama shows up and steals the show? It was South Carolina that sealed her fate. She won the New Hampshire primary after her little crying thing. You know, that seemed to help, or at least that's what people credit with helping. I don't know. I've always been a little skeptical, but then what happens? She lost South Carolina, and she lost big. Obama didn't just, it wasn't like, Obama just kind of etched her out in that primary. Obama crushed her in the South Carolina primary. It was a landslide for Obama. And that set him up for Super Tuesday. And all of a sudden everyone said, wow, he's not a novelty candidate. He really is credible. He really can win this. And then he went on to win the nomination. Hillary won some primaries too along the way. It's not like Obama won South Carolina and then just kept winning. Hillary won quite a few primaries, and she hung in longer than she needed to, honestly, realistically. So she made him sweat it out a little bit, but, it's still, the whole thing had a sense of inevitability about it. So we'll see. So I believe at this moment, the Democratic nomination will be decided in South Carolina. Because if she loses there, if she loses New Hampshire, like I said, she can afford to lose Iowa and New Hampshire, but if she then loses in South Carolina, it's over. And imagine that. We could have in the general election Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders in the general election. And then enter the who would be the Ross Perot figure of 2016, Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York, the billionaire media guy, former Democrat turned Republican turned independent. He is talking about getting in. And if he does, that changes everything. That turns everything on its head. In fact, I have something short here that went up on, I think this was on Politico. Richard Murdoch nudges Bloomberg to mount a presidential run. This went up just this morning. Rupert Murdoch is lighting some fire under Michael Bloomberg to mount an independent bid for president. The News Corp mogul tweeted on Wednesday, because he's a big tweeter. He likes to tweet. He said, quote, "This is Bloomberg's last chance. You never know until your hat is in the ring. Events change everything, especially during elections. Nomination." Unquote. Not full sentences, but remember it was Twitter. Bloomberg has reportedly set March as a deadline to decide on an independent run and is more likely to take the leap if the candidates at the extremes prevail, as in Donald Trump, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, or Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders. When news first broke last weekend that Bloomberg, the former New York City mayor who founded and now runs Bloomberg LP, was considering a run, Murdoch tweeted about what he thought the run could mean. Murdoch tweeted, quote, "Allegedly, Bloomberg again considering running. If he does, may hurt Clinton more than Trump. Seems 2016, the year for populists," unquote. Murdoch's interest in Bloomberg isn't new. In August, Murdoch issued a call for Bloomberg to run via Twitter. He tweeted, quote, "With Trump becoming very serious candidate, it's time for next billionaire candidate, Mike Bloomberg, to step into the ring. Greatest mayor," unquote. Bloomberg was a Democrat before switching to the Republican Party as he ran for mayor. And then while he was mayor, he became an independent. Very interesting to wonder. This is the most interesting presidential election I can recall. I read a piece written by Howard Feynman, a very short piece on the show, on the radio show Monday night, talking about, we may be seeing, I think this is optimistic, overly optimistic, because I would love to see this, but he was speculating that we may be seeing the end of the two-party system, that this may be the beginning of that, because you have on both sides the potential of nominees who the establishment of those respective parties don't want. A lot of the Republican establishment, for example, continues to cling to this notion that he's just going to completely flame out and a more acceptable establishment candidate like a Jeb Bush or a Marco Rubio will emerge as the nominee. Now, that's fantasy stuff. That's not going to happen. Trump will be, I truly believe Trump will be the nominee. He's certainly going to win New Hampshire. I think he's going to, I'm not saying he's going to win every primary in the country, but I think he could. And they're already plotting against him to figure out how to steal it from him at the convention. And if they do that, then Trump may just say, well, screw you guys and run third party. It's disastrous for the Republicans no matter what. And then for the Democrats, you have Bernie Sanders, potentially, who isn't even a Democrat. People forget Bernie Sanders is an independent running for the Democratic nomination because he's a socialist. He's not a Democrat. So they may have to do something on the left about that. If he does, in fact, win enough delegates. And John and I were talking last week on the show, too, about superdelegates and how they can use that to, both parties can use that to manipulate their conventions. And we could see floor fights over the nominations at the conventions, which would be fascinating to see. That's kind of a political junkie's wet dream to see something like that. So it's very interesting. I've never been as fascinated by any presidential race as this one. And it is tantalizing to think about as someone who hates the two-party system, to think about the two parties sort of self-destructing. And look, as far as Mike Bloomberg goes, again, the idea of an independent, I try to support independence whenever possible. I voted for Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson in 2012. I try to rail against the two-party system as much as possible. Now, Mike Bloomberg, what I know about him, the little bit that I know in terms of his run as mayor, I don't know a lot. I'm not a Bloomberg expert, but I do know that he's very pro-gun control. So that's something where I would have to disagree with him. I'm very pro-Second Amendment, but I'm sure, I can find things to agree with and things to disagree with just about any candidate. So, but it is an interesting thing to wonder about, and I do hope he gets in. And I think it's going to hurt Trump more than Hillary. I know Murdoch was saying it probably hurt Hillary more than Trump. I don't think so. I think it'd be the other way around. But wow, wouldn't that be amazing if we actually elected an independent president? Now that may actually be the end of the two parties. Now, let me clarify: the beginning of the end of the two parties. I think it's overly optimistic based on Feynman's article that I read the other night that what we're seeing now is the beginning of that. Obviously, the two parties are very frustrated because the establishment bases of both on both sides are going, oh no. But if we actually manage to elect an independent president, that'd be pretty great. If it's the right person. I don't know if Bloomberg is the right person or not. I need to learn more about, well, actually, I'll probably wait. We'll see if he gets in. But if he does, if he announces, I'm going to want to know everything there is to know about Mike Bloomberg. Let's see. Boy, we have a lot here. Let's talk about, I started to talk about this a little bit last night on the show, on the radio show, but this is something particularly interesting to folks in New Hampshire. MSNBC, this is from the Associated Press. MSNBC and the New Hampshire Union Leader are planning a rogue Democratic debate. So far, Martin O'Malley is the only one who's confirmed for this. But what they're trying to do is, there's been a lot of frustration with the way that the Democrats, the Democratic National Committee, and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, political hack that she is, the way they've scheduled these Democratic debates so far. There were two of them in a row that were each on a Saturday night when people are the least likely to be watching. And then the most recent one was on a Sunday night on the weekend of the Martin Luther King holiday, where people were not likely to be watching. If you notice, the Republican debates are typically on a weeknight when they're going to score a much larger audience. And Debbie Wasserman Schultz has been criticized for this because it's obvious what she's doing. She's trying to protect Hillary. She denies it, of course, but it's obvious. In fact, she had the temerity to say, no, not only am I not trying to keep viewers away, I've been trying to schedule these on nights when I think they will garner a large viewership, which is BS. You don't even have to work in television to know that the worst possible nights to put these debates, if you're trying to get people to watch them, are a Saturday or a Sunday night. So she's lying, and she clearly is trying to protect Hillary because if you put them when young people are unlikely to be watching, then you give Bernie Sanders less exposure, because Bernie Sanders, the 75-year-old Bernie Sanders, actually has really caught on with young people. And you run the risk of pulling even more of those young people in over to his side if they actually see these debates. Because in these debates, he has consistently one-upped Hillary. I think all three of them are good debaters. I think Bernie, Hillary, and Martin O'Malley, all three of them are solid debaters. But Bernie seems to just have a way of one-upping Hillary and making her look like the corporate shill that she is, and making himself look like the grassroots candidate. Look, I'll tell you what, whether you like Bernie or not, whether you agree with him or not, he has proven that you can mount a serious presidential campaign without relying on donations, on, $1 million or six-figure donations from corporate donors, from fat cats like, on the left you have George Soros, or on the right you have the Koch brothers. You can do that. You can mount a serious campaign, a credible campaign, without relying on those people, by only accepting small donations. He's proven you can do it, which leaves everyone else with no excuse. And I think that's great. And I respect and admire him for doing that. Now, I don't agree with him in the macro politically, although he does speak truth on some things, like legalizing cannabis, like mass incarceration in our prison system. He was even talking about auditing the Fed, which is something libertarians tend to be passionate about. Ron Paul, very passionate about that. There are things in his message that are difficult to argue with. But what I really like is the broader message that says, hey, you really can mount a campaign by trying to represent individuals and not corporations and the lobbies and the banking lobby, Wall Street, et cetera, all that. They love Hillary just like they love Obama. He has no use for them and they have no use for him, and that's just fine. That is a great political story. Even if he doesn't get anywhere near the nomination, even if he falls way short, it is a great political story and an encouraging one. Again, even if you hate him, even if you don't agree with anything that he says, to think what this guy has shown us is possible in modern American campaigning is stunning. And I think it's something we all always knew deep down, just now someone's actually gone and done it and proven it. We're talking about he could potentially win. The candidate who's done this with none of these big money donations from those who would support establishment candidates is about to win the New Hampshire primary. It's a great political story. All right, let me read this quickly. This is about this unsanctioned debate that would not be on a Saturday or a Sunday. Again, this comes to us courtesy of the Associated Press. Another Democratic debate could be held next week. The New Hampshire Union Leader and MSNBC are planning to host an unsanctioned Democratic debate on February 4, just 5 days before the New Hampshire primary. The proposed event, which is to be moderated by Meet the Press host Chuck Todd and MSNBC host Rachel Maddow, threatens the Democratic National Committee's power over the debate schedule. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley's campaign indicated Tuesday that its candidate would participate. John Bivona, O'Malley's New Hampshire state director, said in a statement, quote, "Today is a big victory not only for our campaign and our supporters that championed this effort, but it is also a victory for voters across New Hampshire and the United States," unquote. O'Malley, whose poll numbers remain in single digits, would presumably gain the most from a national televised debate. Not so much, though, that he's a threat. Clinton Communications Director Jennifer Palmieri said in a statement, quote, "Hillary Clinton would be happy to participate in a debate in New Hampshire if the other candidates agree, which would allow the DNC to sanction the debate," unquote. That's a little slippery. Because, so O'Malley's already agreed. Now, if Bernie Sanders agrees, then she's committed to agreeing because she said if the other candidates agree, she'll do it. Or is she? Because if she agrees to it, but the DNC still won't sanction it, she can just, what they'll do is she'll turn around and say, well, yeah, I agreed, but I then assumed that the DNC would sanction the debate, and they haven't, so no. Although maybe she couldn't I don't know if she'd get away with that or not, because then, I don't know, because then they could say, Bernie and O'Malley could both say, well, wait a minute. She's just trying to protect her front runner status. What is she afraid of? Why doesn't she want to debate us right before the New Hampshire primary? So I don't know. They might be able to shame her into doing it. A Sanders spokesman did not comment specifically on the proposed February 4th debate, but said in an email to the campaign, quote, "We will be working with the DNC on other campaigns to schedule additional debates," unquote. That doesn't sound promising, but it surprises me, because to me, Sanders has the most to gain in terms of the three candidates, because like I said, in every debate, he seems to one-up Hillary and comes out the clear winner. In a statement, DNC, you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, though, maybe because he looks like he's on track to win New Hampshire, regardless, maybe he's afraid to screw that up. I don't know. In a statement, DNC Chair Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz said the committee has, quote, "no plans to sanction any further debates before the upcoming First in the Nation caucuses and primary, but will reconvene with our campaigns after those two contests to review our schedule," unquote. So in other words, she's saying, nope, forget it. The DNC scheduled 6 debates this election cycle, with just 4 taking place before the Iowa caucuses and New Hampshire primaries, and 3 of those occurring on weekends. The most recent debate was held January 17th, with another not slated until after New Hampshire voters go to the polls on February 9th. Come on, that's not an accident. That's not a coincidence. She is trying to protect Hillary. BuzzFeed first reported news of the upcoming debate, and the union leader confirmed its plans in an article on the site. In the article, union leader, president, and publisher Joseph W. McQuaid said this cycle would have been, quote, "the first time in 32 years without a Democratic debate before the New Hampshire primary," unquote. McQuaid told HuffPost that, quote, "he can't imagine the Democratic candidates post-Iowa would want to be seen as breaking with a New Hampshire tradition," unquote. Union leader executive editor Trent Spiner said in a separate email that there, quote, "has been a true groundswell for another debate in New Hampshire. It's not just readers and local politicos. I've been stopped at the grocery store by undecided voters who say they're just starting to pay attention now. We feel it is our duty to provide Granite Staters with the information they need before they head to the polls," unquote. The DNC, like its counterparts at the Republican National Committee, took a firmer hand this cycle over the debate process and threatened to exclude candidates who take part in so-called unsanctioned debates from participating in those officially scheduled, 2 of which still remain. Candidates are permitted to participate in forums or town halls, like CNN's Monday night, in which they don't engage with one another on stage. Yeah, that's something we've seen before, where they actually threaten the candidates, but that just looks bad. No one should feel good. Both the DNC and the RNC are guilty of that in the past. No one should feel good about our democratic process of picking a president when you've got the apparatus of the 2 major parties actually threatening candidates within their own parties. That we're going to punish you, we're going to censor you by keeping you out of upcoming debates if you do something that we don't approve of in the context of debates. Wasserman Schultz has long defended the party's debate schedule, which has faced criticism from the Sanders and O'Malley campaigns, as well as from leaders such as Vice Chair and Iowa Congressman Tulsi Gabbard. Notice who has not criticized Congressman Schultz on this, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Many have viewed the DNC's debate schedule as structured to benefit Clinton by offering few opportunities for rivals to gain national exposure and perhaps momentum against the party's frontrunner. However, some Clinton advisors have recently expressed regret that there weren't more debates scheduled, as Sanders presents a serious challenge to Clinton in Iowa and New Hampshire. Well, I don't think more debates would help her, actually, because like I said, I think Sanders winds up coming out of these things looking pretty good. So I don't think that would benefit her. But I do think the rest of us would like to see more debates, not less. There were quite a few, from what I recall, and I don't remember. Well, in 2012, there were no Democratic debates because Obama was the incumbent. But in 2008, I seem to recall there were quite a few Democratic debates and a hell of a lot of Republican debates in 2012. So, and what's interesting, now that I think about it, some people thought that actually hurt Romney in 2012, that there were too many debates during the primaries, and that actually damaged Romney because there were so many debates that by the time he got to the nomination, he was damaged goods, which is an interesting theory because, but Romney, the ultimate flip-flopper, by participating in so many debates, we got to see him on display just flip-flopping all over the place. I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I think that term is overused. I think that, people can change their minds about issues over time. I certainly don't believe all the same things I did, say 5 years ago, or in some instances even 1 or 2 years ago. People do change and grow and evolve, but that guy he would say one thing though at one event and then 5 minutes later tell another group of people something completely different, and then 5 minutes after that tell the media he couldn't remember saying any of it. So, what do you mean? I didn't say that. And so maybe the debates did hurt him. I don't know. But, always better to have more, not less. Of course. Plus, the Republican debates are just great television. So we'll see if that rogue debate happens. So let's get to the Trump stuff. So speaking of debates, apparently the next Republican debate, conspicuous by his absence, will be the Donald. He has chosen not to participate. Will it hurt him not participating in the debate? I doubt it. He recently joked himself that he could shoot somebody in the middle of the street and it wouldn't affect his poll numbers one bit. He's probably right. But this has been a fun story to watch. His ongoing feud with Fox News and specifically with Megyn Kelly. This was on Politico. Trump's showdown with Fox News escalates. This is the latest update as of this morning. The real estate mogul refuses to budge on his debate boycott while his campaign accuses Megyn Kelly of being totally obsessed with Trump. They do love the hyperbole. The Donald does, and his campaign does. Let's see. It says here, Trump slept on it and he's not budging. After Donald Trump declared Tuesday night that he would boycott Fox News' Thursday primetime debate, the Republican poll leader is publicly refusing to blink, with his campaign manager accusing moderator Megyn Kelly of being out to get Trump. Corey Lewandowski told MSNBC's Morning Joe in a telephone interview on Wednesday, quote, so that was this morning this happened, he said, quote, what we know is Megyn Kelly is totally obsessed with Mr. Trump. She's on show after show about why the media shouldn't be having him on television, unquote. Has she been doing that? I haven't seen any of that. And Trump himself took to Twitter to indirectly call Kelly a nasty name that he's broken out before. He said, quote, I refuse to call Megyn Kelly a bimbo because that would not be politically correct. Instead, I will only call her a lightweight reporter, unquote. The real estate mogul tweeted early Wednesday. Trump does that constantly. He does that thing like, I could say this about you, but that wouldn't be polite, and I wouldn't do that. He probably thinks that's funny when he does that. Trump's decision to once again wage war on Fox and Kelly so close to the Iowa caucuses is either a shrewd one or a boneheaded one, depending on who you ask. It doesn't matter. He's right. He could shoot somebody in the middle of the street. Wouldn't affect his polls. While some are contending that Trump risks coming off as a coward, walking away from a fight, it's undeniable that he's robbing the media oxygen from his rivals as they try to make their closing arguments to caucus goers. The tiff apparently started after Trump tried to pressure Fox News to boot Kelly as one of the moderators. Kelly gained heightened notoriety after pointedly asking Trump at the first debate about his supposed war on women. But Fox refused to give in, correctly, good for them, issuing a biting press statement on Tuesday saying, quote, "We learned from a secret back channel that the Ayatollah and Putin both intend to treat Donald Trump unfairly when they meet with him if he becomes president. A nefarious source tells us that Trump has his own secret plan to replace the cabinet with his Twitter followers to see if he should even go to those meetings," unquote. Fox doubled down after Trump's declaration of a boycott, issuing a statement Tuesday night that accused Lewandowski of threatening the network with terrorizations of Kelly. The network alleged, quote, "In a call on Saturday with a Fox News executive, Lewandowski stated that Megyn had a rough couple of days after that last debate, and he would hate to have her go through that again," unquote. That sounds like a threat. Trump on Wednesday morning slammed Fox for the allegation, saying on Twitter, quote, "The statement put out yesterday by @Fox News was a disgrace to good broadcasting and journalism. Who would ever say something so nasty and dumb," unquote. Who would ever say something so nasty and dumb? That's definitely a pot meat kettle moment for the Donald. Lewandowski himself dismissed Fox as being unfair brokers and tried to dispel the notion that Trump is worried about a final debate before the caucuses could expose weakness in his candidacy. Trump is, quote, "the best debater on the debate stage. We know this. He's the clear winner. He has been by every debate poll that's taken place," unquote, he said on Morning Joe. He also said, quote, "He's not afraid to debate. I want to be very clear about this. He's done more television, more radio than all of the other candidates combined. And so he's not afraid to answer questions. He's on your show all the time. He was on yesterday. But the bottom line is you have people that aren't going to be fair and ask questions the American people want to talk about. And instead, they want to make this about themselves. And that's what this is about. And it's a shame," unquote. So is he suggesting that Megyn Kelly just wants to make this about herself and score points? I see no evidence of that. Asked about Ted Cruz's call for a one-on-one debate before Monday's caucuses in Iowa, Lewandowski said the Texas senator's campaign was not the only one to reach out asking if they could participate in an alternate event Trump's campaign is setting up, a fundraiser for wounded warriors and veterans on Thursday night in Des Moines. Lewandowski said, "Well, look, he's not the only one. We've had calls from many debates, from many of the candidates now to say, look, why would we participate in the Fox debate as well? I think what you're finding out once again, you have the candidates reacting to the only true leader in this race, which is Donald Trump. He leads, and all of a sudden everyone realizes that, hey, maybe it's not the best idea to be involved in these debates." By the way, my BS meter is redlining right now. Sorry, there's more to the statement. Just letting you know. All right. He leads, and all of a sudden everyone realizes that, hey, maybe it's not the best idea to be involved in these debates. Maybe we should leave as well. Sure they are. So I had a number of calls yesterday with some of the other campaigns who said, hey, can we come and join you in raising money for the wounded warriors and the veterans? Because, you know, Fox isn't going to be fair to you. What makes them think that they're going to be fair to us, unquote? Come on. Yeah, my BS meter has redlined. I don't believe any of that. Somebody else's campaign called Corey Lewandowski and said, hey, we're thinking about bailing on this one too. Can we come do that event with you? Because you're right. They're not going to be fair to you. So why should we think they're going to be fair to us? Come on. If you believe that, I don't care if you're the biggest dyed-in-the-wool Trump supporter that ever walked the earth. If you believe that statement, if you actually believe that, what he said there, you are, I say this with respect, just a gullible rube. You deserve the candidate you get if you honestly believe that statement. As for whether more could bolt from the Thursday night debate, Lewandowski demurred. Well, of course. He said, quote, well, it's very possible. Obviously, they have to do what they think is best for their campaign, but they reached out to us proactively so they could be part of our debate, our event, which we're going to do on Thursday night in Des Moines. And so we'll see what happens, unquote. Well, I'd be curious to know who specifically reached out to you, Mr. Lewandowski. So far, there are no public signs that any of the other candidates will be joining Trump, though many are trying to make hay out of the billionaire businessman supposedly walking away from the debate. Cruz, who is neck and neck with Trump in the Iowa polls, is especially hitting Trump hard for the boycott. He sent out a series of tweets pressuring Trump to accept his invitation for a one-on-one debate and trying to get the hashtag Ducking Donald meme to stick on Twitter. On Wednesday morning, he invoked Monty Python's Brave Sir Robin Ran Away to mock Trump, tweeting, quote, "Real Donald Trump, trembling at being questioned by Megyn Kelly, channels Monty Python," Cruz tweeted, including a link to a YouTube clip. Chris Christie, for his part, sees an upside if Trump doesn't want to show up on Thursday night, saying he, quote, "will give us more time to talk. That's okay with me, but the American people should wonder, if you're not willing to show up when everything isn't going your way, that's not the way your job as governor goes," unquote. Christie told Kelly on Fox News, also saying, quote, "I'll be there," unquote. Oh, really? I would have thought Chris Christie would have been calling Corey Lewandowski and begging him, please, I don't want to go to this debate. I want to go to Des Moines where you are, please. And some are predicting that Fox's ratings could sink without Trump on stage. But I doubt that, by the way, and I'll tell you why. A factor that could play into some last-minute behind-the-scenes negotiations on Wednesday. No. They can afford to take the risk. The ratings won't be lower because of Trump's lack of presence, because Trump will be conspicuous by his absence. People will tune in to see the debate without Trump, just because without him there, it will be interesting to see what happens when Trump isn't there. Trust me, they will still tune in. Trump's not being there will be the selling factor because people will be curious about that. So I hope they stick to their guns. I hope they don't cave. So far, Fox News has done here's a sentence I don't say often. So far, Fox News has done the correct thing journalistically by not caving in to a candidate's demands to remove a particular moderator. They've done the right thing and have shown, again, not something you hear me say often, Fox has shown integrity in doing so. And good for them. I hope they don't cave. Let's see. MSNBC's Chris Matthews asked during Thursday night's episode of Hardball, he said, quote, "Who's going to watch a debate between the two Cuban guys? Who's going to watch a debate between Rubio and Ted Cruz? Who cares?" Unquote. No. Chris Matthews is wrong. They will tune in. I guarantee it. I know I'm genuinely curious. What happens when Trump isn't there, sucking all the oxygen out of the room? I want to know. It's not clear how a resolution would be brokered between Trump and Fox, and Lewandowski kept up the war of words on Wednesday morning, slamming the press release that mocked Trump's apprehension of participating in a debate with Kelly. He said, quote, "Well, I don't want to get into the internal discussions, but I can tell you, there were some other issues raised earlier by my conversations with some of the Fox executives. I think what they want to be is they want to be very dishonest, unfortunately. And it's a shame, because when you have a conversation with some of the Fox executives, you'd hope that they'd keep that conversation private. Instead you've got executives over there who've got relatives working for other campaigns. These are the people who put the debate questions together. And instead of having those conversations and making sure that the debate is going to be fair, they do things like troll Mr. Trump and put out statements that aren't very helpful when you're trying to have an open and honest dialogue on the debate stage," unquote. Okay. Kelly addressed the dispute on her Fox program Tuesday night, saying, quote, "He doesn't get to control the media. I'll be there. The debate will go on with or without Mr. Trump," unquote. But Lewandowski said Wednesday morning that Trump's boycott of the debate has nothing to do with Megyn Kelly. My BS meter continues to redline, hasn't budged. Let's see. Quote, "What this is about Fox News, which is making tens of millions of dollars on the debate and setting records. The highest in the history of cable television, unlike previous years," he said. unquote. He said, echoing the initial campaign statement, quote, and unlike the very stupid and highly incompetent people that run our country, Mr. Trump knows when to walk away from a bad deal. It's Roger Ailes, it's Fox News. They think they can toy with Trump. Mr. Trump doesn't play games. You guys know that. He's been to 6 debates. He's stood on the stage with Megyn Kelly. He's answered every question from every debate moderator who's posed a question to him. He's won every debate, unquote. Repeating that Kelly was not wholly responsible for the Trump campaign's decision, Lewandowski said the decision is, quote, about giving the American people the opportunity to ask questions, to hear from the candidates directly in a fair manner. And what we saw, either with the CNBC debate, is when the moderators want to be the story and not let the candidate answer or have the opportunity to answer questions that the American people care about. There's ramifications to that. There's repercussions to that, unquote. It's unusual for me to want to so vehemently take the side of and defend Fox News. But Fox News, again, mark this date down, you won't hear this often. Fox News is 100% correct on this. And this is, it's just silly. What the Trump campaign is doing. Will it hurt him? No, won't hurt him. Won't matter at all. Won't be a factor. But everyone else who's just fighting to come in second, look, here's what the debate will really be. If we're really being honest about it. If you believe my premise that ultimately it won't make any difference and it won't hurt Trump. I think Trump looks ridiculous, but so what? Many of you, the more ridiculous he looks, the more you love him. So whatever, I can't help you there. It is what it is. But here's what the debate will really be if Trump isn't there. It will be a debate of candidates for the vice presidential nomination. That's really what it'll be. It'll be Ted Cruz. It'll be the two Cubans, as Chris Matthews pointed out. Yeah, you'll get to see the two Cubans fighting it out for the VP slot. That's really what it'll be. Jeb, I don't think wants to be Jeb. No, because Jeb doesn't want to be VP. His brother was president. For Jeb to be VP would be, he won't accept that. So it'll be Rubio and Cruz and Christie and Kasich, all fighting it out for who's going to be Trump's VP. That's what the debate's going to be. Now they'll be beating the hell out of him in the process. So, because you might say, well, how can they be fighting for the VP slot when you know they're going to bash the hell out of him for not being there? And because they'll all get to talk more because he's not there. But, that all tends to get forgotten ultimately. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama said all kinds of nasty things in 2008 about each other. Didn't preclude Obama from tapping her to be Secretary of State. It does eventually get forgotten. But then again, this has been a very atypical presidential campaign. But that's what you're going to see on Fox. You're going to see a vice presidential primary debate without Trump there. Because Trump's going to be the nominee. You can't stop him. It's hopeless. Hopeless. There's still many who are clinging to this idea. Just like the Democrats are clinging to Hillary and don't think Bernie's a threat. Well, you might be right. You probably are right, but Bernie is a threat. But the Republicans who are clinging to this idea that, no, we're going to get an acceptable establishment candidate. It's not going to be Trump. You're dreaming. You're delusional. It's going to be Trump. Even evangelicals. Now, this is the weird thing. Actually, we talked about this a little bit last week on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. The Honorable Gary S. Hopper was talking about, there was a event where campaign was talking about, he was trying to a guy who probably has never read any of the Bible is standing there trying to, not the first time too that he's, I was going to say he's embarrassed himself trying to look like a Christian, but Trump has no sense of embarrassment ever. So he didn't really embarrass himself. He just made others kind of roll their eyes. There was that one campaign event early in his campaign where he was speaking to evangelicals, talking about, oh yeah, I go to church and I eat the wafer and I drink the wine and whatever. And it's like, really? I was raised Catholic. I know it's the Eucharist is what you call it. The body of Christ. You don't call it the wafer. That's the kind of thing people like me say when we're making fun of organized religion. We call it the wafer. He has no sense of how to talk to evangelicals. And he may actually believe in God. I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know what his true beliefs are. But when he tries to look like he fits in with these people, he blows it, and yet they don't seem to mind. Oh, but there was that recent event where he's referring to 2 Corinthians. Like he's talking about the 2 Corinthians. Like there were these 2 guys whose last name was Corinthians, and together they wrote the book of Corinthians or something. Like he just was confused at a level where Gary, who in the past has defended Trump, was kind of like, because Gary is, he considers himself he's a right-wing Christian. He was kind of like, yeah, that was embarrassing watching Trump in that moment. But it doesn't seem to matter. It's incredible. This was from Politico. Latest poll shows evangelicals flocking to Trump. They love him. Let me read this quickly, and because we're almost out of time, but this is short. This went up yesterday. It says, Donald Trump's outreach to Christians is bearing fruit if results of the NBC News weekly online tracking poll put out Tuesday are any indication. Among white evangelical Republican voters nationally, Trump earned the support of 37%, while Texas Senator Ted Cruz, whose father, what happened there? I was thinking when I think evangelicals from Texas, I think of Rick Perry. Texas Senator Ted Cruz, whose father is a pastor and has played a key role in recruiting faith leaders to support his son, is at only 20%. In the same survey conducted the previous week, Cruz registered 9 percentage points higher. Below the top 2 contenders, Ben Carson earned 11% among evangelicals, and Marco Rubio took 10%. The Manhattan business mogul, who is Presbyterian, made headlines throughout the course of the past week for his various interactions with fellow Christians, including a stop at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia last Monday. This was the event that Gary was talking about. Delivering the weekly convocation address, Trump caused a stir when he made reference to a book in the Bible called 2 Corinthians rather than the usual nomenclature 2 Corinthians. Trump later claimed it was written that way in his notes, and besides, his mother was Scottish and would have said it that way. Oh, there goes my BS meter again. Trump also attended a Presbyterian service in Muscatine, Iowa on Sunday, at which the pastor made reference to the ongoing immigration crisis, a central plank in the Republicans' campaign, and humility in general. Trump later said, quote, "I don't know if that was aimed at me," unquote. The poll's overall week-to-week standings show little shift, with Trump leading the field at 39%. Cruz at 17, Rubio at 10. No other candidate received double-digit support. There's more polling data here. On the Democratic side, Hillary Clinton's advantage remained in double digits. Again, this is national polling, at 51% to Bernie's 37%. Yeah, they're flocking to him. They I don't know. I'll tell you one thing though. There's something almost reassuring to a secularist like myself to see that a candidate who clearly is faking it, let's just be blunt, he's faking it in terms of his Christianity and trying to appeal to these people. But there's something reassuring about seeing a candidate who clearly, again, I don't know what's in his heart. Maybe he is a Christian of some sort, but, he's probably not particularly committed to that. I don't think he goes to church every Sunday. But to see that a candidate who is not overtly religious can still be considered a serious presidential candidate in the Republican process of nominating a candidate without being overtly religious, that encourages me only in the sense that perhaps the Christian right, the Christian far right, the evangelical right of the Republican Party doesn't have as much of a grip on the Republican Party, as I often fear that it does. And I kind of felt that same sort of odd reassurance before. Romney, I mean, he's a Mormon, and he was still able to win the nomination and had a shot at beating Obama. And John McCain, who I don't know if McCain is even religious at all. I've never really heard McCain discuss his faith. He may just be very private about it, or he may secretly be an atheist. He's certainly not going to openly. I mean, I strongly suspect that there are a lot more atheists than we know of on both sides of the aisle who don't dare come out as being openly atheists, because it's very difficult to get elected to office in this country if you are openly atheist. But we are about out of time, so we'll see. There is I didn't get to it. Maybe I'll get to it tomorrow night on the radio show. Mark Vogel, conservative Christian blogger from Texas, who's been on the show before via phone. I haven't had Mark on in a while. I should reach out to him. But he wrote a very interesting blog online right after the Sarah Palin endorsement of Trump, just basically saying, what the hell? The guy clearly is not a real Christian. He's not even a real conservative. Why would Sarah Palin endorse him? And I think a lot of people are kind of wondering that. But Sarah Palin, I mean, ultimately, what's it matter? I mean, she's, like I always say, I try to avoid the ad hominem attacks on these people, but she is the dumbest figure ever to emerge in national politics, at least in the modern era that I can think of. Just, I mean, I said it once before. She's like if someone asked me to describe Sarah Palin who'd never seen her or even heard her speak, I would say, well, she's like a Hooters waitress with learning disabilities. I think that pretty much sums up Sarah Palin, the former half governor of Alaska. Like I said, I always call her the half governor because she couldn't even be bothered to serve out a full term. She had a reality show to go do where she's shooting wolves out of a helicopter. Oh boy, American politics. It is fun, isn't it? All right, that's going to do it. We're out of time. Of course, don't forget the radio edition of Unleashed, Monday through Friday at 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1, and Tuesdays and Thursday nights we're also on OTR FM. And, of course, if you missed any portion of today's live show, we will have it up and available for you, usually by about 9 p.m. on both our YouTube and our Vimeo channels on IPM Nation. If you haven't been to the IPM Nation site lately, by the way, and I realize you might be right there now watching this, but if you haven't taken a look at it lately, a lot of cool new stuff there, a lot of great new shows and products you can buy, and all kinds of fun. So please check it out. And of course, if you are watching live on Wednesday, I will be back at 6 p.m. with the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. So thank you all. I will talk at y'all a little bit later.